One. Hi, and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and this evening it is our pleasure to introduce Shanay Whittaker. She is a political strategist. She is politically active in Detroit and New York City, and she is the former Minority Caucus Chair for the Young Democrats, and she has worked for the city of Detroit. And this evening, we are talking women in politics. Good evening, Shanay. How are you?
I am okay, Kim. How about you today?
I am great, despite all the things that are going on in the world. So let's get to it because we don't have a lot of time. So 2020 has been this strange year. It started off with hope, and then COVID-19 hit. And we were like, oh. Then we witnessed the murder of George Floyd and several more deaths after that, including Breonna Taylor. We witnessed videotape of Ahmaud Arbery being gunned down. We have watched countless times as we see video. National unrest rose up. I don't know about you, that kind of surprised me, but then
Yes.
not. But then what really surprised me was the fact that globally, people were saying George Floyd's name. They were saying Breonna Taylor's name. They were saying Ahmaud Arbery's name in some
Yes.
countries that we had never heard of before.
Yes.
And it seems like the scab has been ripped off of the wound of racism in this country.
Yes.
As a woman, how are you feeling? And as a Black woman, what do you see, or how are you feeling? And that's a two-pronged question intentionally, because as women, we occupy two roles. We are women first
Mhm.
and Black also, or vice versa, however you look at it. And we occupy a very tenuous place, I think, in society.
Uh, I'm exhausted.
It is.
That's the realest I can say. I'm mentally, physically, emotionally exhausted. I'm seeing what happened to George Floyd, knowing what happened to Breonna Taylor, knowing what's going on within our communities in COVID. It's exhausting. It is exhausting. Sometimes I wish I could just close my eyes and we can skip over to 2021. And I know we can't do that, but we're still here. And for me, as someone who works with people every day and talk to people every day, I feel for myself. I feel for other women, especially Black women, because we carry that double burden. Um, but I just push on through. That's all I can do. And I try to create a space for myself where I can give myself time to breathe, time to not be mom, time to not be a wife, not time to not be grandma, and just be Shanae. And I just encourage other Black women to do the same thing, create that space, create that time, and create boundaries. So I think that when other women do that, especially Black women, it helps a little bit to ease their angst, but it's exhausting, honestly.
Absolutely. And that is the best description of I think how a lot of us are feeling. Were you surprised by the unrest that sparked across the country, or did you expect it?
I I wasn't surprised, but I still didn't expect it. I mean, but then again, if you reflect now, is a powder keg waiting to pop off. I mean, since Charlottesville, since what happened with with George Floyd and with Ahmaud Arbery, and people are just getting tired of being gunned down and treated like crap. It was
Mhm.
bound to happen. And then you have someone in the White House who instigates that as well, who plays into that and stokes fear and anxiety amongst everyone. So it was bound to happen. Maybe this is another catalyst for change. I hope it is towards making this country better. But, looking back on it, it was bound to happen, especially with the leadership that we have today.
So speaking of the leadership, I don't know if you got a chance to watch. There was a debate last night. I can't really call it that. It
Woo.
seemed to me, and there are some words that I could use to describe it, but I should not say them because they're not good words. But there were words like trash can, crap, what the heck is this? Is this a WWE match? I
Mhm.
mean, it was riddled with problems. You just stated that when we have leadership that does not address the very concerns that a part of your population has that faces that, what do you do? And that automatically brings me to Jacob Blake. You know, Jacob Blake, whatever the situation was shot 7 times in the back.
Yes.
And people can say, well, he should have complied. He should have done a lot of things. But why did he have to be shot 7 times? And no one,
Shouldn't never escalated to that point.
never ever. And I don't know if we'll ever get an answer to that. But I know one of the questions last night was about law and order. And I know we hear a lot about law and order. And as an African American person, Black person, however you identify, what are your thoughts specifically as a woman? Because we give birth to children.
Yes, as a woman, law and order means to me, it goes back to the 1600s. They use the same terms during slavery with the slave codes. So there was law and order, and the people who were in power specifically targeted poor whites to do their policing. And they said the same thing. The stand your ground laws, they're based on the slave codes, so it verbatim, really verbatim. If one of the best books I've read was Slave Patrols by Sally Haddon, and it talks about those same laws that we use, the same language we hear today in the stand your ground, law and order. It's the same language that was used in the 1600s and in the colonies. So, it's scary to me. I know what that means. I'm a mom of 6, 2 boys, 20-year-olds, and 4 girls from a range of 24 on down to 21. So I'm scared for my kids. I'm scared for your babies, your sons. And
Mm,
I'm scared for my husband. I'm scared for your husband and so many people in our community and across the country. So it's not just here in Detroit. I mean, we see it nationwide. I don't know anyone that's Black in America that doesn't have a family member that hasn't had a negative experience with the police or policing. My mother was a police officer, but she would tell you that she was honest about her job. They had quotas. I don't know if it's the same now, but it's there's like a benefit in arresting people. You're praised for arresting people, for the number of people you arrest. So it makes it a game to those who don't take law enforcement seriously, who have implicit biases against Black people, and you give them the opportunity to harm us without repercussion and with protection from the system that actually was not made for us as well.
absolutely. And I understand what you say. My father was Wayne County Sheriff for a short time, and then he became an attorney. And one of the things he always said, if you ever get pulled over, the first thing you do is you be quiet and you ask for an attorney. You call me. You do
That's right.
not engage with the police officers. You make sure that you make it home alive. So this is not a new conversation that we're having, and it's sad and unfortunate that some
Hmm.
people think that it is a new conversation because they've never had to have that conversation before.
That's
But
a privilege.
it is a privilege. Absolutely. And that's one of those things when we talk about white privilege, I'm like, you don't have to talk to your kids about what it means to be out in public. And you're absolutely correct. My son is 11. He's turning 12. He's getting ready to be a teenager. There are
Yes.
certain things that he's going to want to do, like going to the mall and hanging out with his friends. I am at the point I may have to shadow him just
Yes.
because I have to worry, is someone going to harass him? Even if it's just him and 3 other friends, because he has 2 best friends. So it would just be the 3 of them.
Yes.
Is someone going to say they look suspicious? They fit the description of someone for something that happened and it wasn't even them. They
Hmm.
didn't have anything to do with it. I found it interesting last night to listen to Trump talk about Black Lives Matter as being this left wing extremist group. Yet at the same time, he gave the Proud Boys,
Mm-hmm.
it was like marching orders, like just stand back, wait. And they're all over Twitter today
Yes.
saying, well, our president told us to stand down, but we're ready to go whenever he tells us to. And I was listening to him saying, we're trying to get people to go to the polls and people, and I know that you know this because you're active as I am as well. People are being told, be careful when you go to the polls. Do not engage with people because they are looking for a reason to throw you out.
Yes.
Tell
You
me,
know, yeah.
tell me your thoughts. I'm sorry.
I think that's also a form of voter suppression. I always hark back to history of the Black codes. That's what it reminds me of. Before our folks came up north, they had to deal with that, and how people in power in the government would use white uh, militias or white what do they call them? White supremacist groups
Yeah.
like the Klan to intimidate Black voters. So it's like history repeating itself, and people are it's mind blowing to me that people are surprised that this is something that's brand new when we know it's not. It's happened throughout history. I mean, are the men in our family really gained the right to vote in 1867, and then after that, especially in the South, the Reconstruction came. And that's when the KKK came into prominence and started doing what Trump told them to do back now that they told them to do back then, is to watch the polls, to make sure everybody's on up and up, and to intimidate Black people from voting, and that's what he's doing. And he knows why. He knows that the lower the turnout, the higher the chance he has to win. And even if he doesn't win, if the election is close enough, then he can contest that in the court with the judge that he has recommended to the Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett. So there's that two-prong attack. One is to lower the turnout and to suppress the vote. The other is, just in case I'm close enough, I'm going to have the person that I appointed on the Supreme Court. And for quid pro quo, they won't call it that, but that's what it is, the favor for a favor. Then she's going to adjudicate in my in my favor. And so I'm still a president of the United States. So it's disheartening, and I hope people understand that it's intentional. It's supposed to scare you. It's supposed to intimidate you. It's supposed to suppress your vote. So again, this is history repeating itself. I just hope people see past it and they understand that this is not both sides. This is just one side that's basically trying to put your vote to disempower you and to try to stop you from voting. It's one side that's actually doing it. And I think that people need to understand that. I know that there are flaws within both parties, but only one party's out asking you not to vote and trying to force you not to vote and trying to discourage you from voting and trying to challenge you if you are doing mail-in voting, which has gone on since the Civil War. So, I'm not surprised. I'm from New York. I've seen Trump in action. We know what it was with the Central Park Five and how he wanted to execute those young men. They were babies at the time. And what he did in the 1970s with not renting to Black people and not wanting Black accountants. And he said it. So he's a reflection of who he is. I knew what he was when he first ran. A lot of the country, they saw The Apprentice and they saw that. And then he tapped into something that that was a recoil of the success of the Obama administration.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Said it better than that. So now I want to switch gears a little bit because we have seen an influx of women running for office.
Yes.
And we have so many women who are running for office. It's in great numbers. What are your thoughts? Is this a referendum on some of the patriarchy that we see throughout the country, or is it something else?
It is a referendum, but it's also something else. I think it's about women who are finally feeling confident enough to run. They see what's in the White House. They see that this guy has cheated on his wives multiple
Yeah.
times. He has baby mamas, he's a walking stereotype. He pays only $750 in taxes and he lives in public housing. So that's what we're dealing with. And people are women are saying, listen, if this bozo can do this, and he's not that bright, and he goes after the lowest common denominator.
Mhm.
If he could do it, I can do it. And here I am, I'm educated. I know the issues. I know about my community. I'm rooted in my community. And this is about me giving back. Why not? And also one more thing, it's easier for women to fundraise now. And, fundraising back in the early 2000s, even, in the 1990s, it was hard. It was hard for a woman candidate to fundraise, and it takes a lot of money to fundraise. And now that you have groups that are out there that are supporting women candidates, that are encouraging them to run and training them on how to run, I think that's why we've seen a lot of impressive women in office now.
And that's a great point. And I want to say, I think we see a lot of impressive women who are running campaigns now. It
Yes.
was something that, it wasn't heard of. You had mainly men that were doing that. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, I can recall one of my favorite images is watching Donna Brazile in 2000 with the Al Gore campaign. Even though the outcome wasn't the way we wanted at the time, she still ran a presidential campaign, the first Black woman to do so. And on that kind of level, going into the new economy, the new technological economy, for me, seeing her do that kind of job and where she came from politically and how she started, as many people do as volunteers, to
Mhm.
where she is now. Yeah, that was exciting. It's exciting to see. And then this year with uh, Julian Castro's campaign, you had a Black woman running it. In Senator Harris's campaign, you had a Black woman running the campaign. And then, in Senator Biden's campaign, you had someone high profile like Simone Sanders, who's doing God's work. I mean, she's amazing. I think she's one of the most unique people that I've seen in politics. And she breaks the barrier of what a political should look like, what they should sound like, how they should carry themselves. She's amazing. She's like, for me, I see her as like a homegirl doing it up. She's from Nebraska. She's just doing it, and seeing her in this way is amazing. And I'm very, very happy to see that. And even across the country, you have these Black women who are running in Congress, like Ayanna Pressley and Lauren Underwood. Seeing those women, excuse me, seeing those women run for office, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. So and they're raising a lot of money too. I hate to say money, but that's a big part of
Yeah.
of the process. It's raising money and seeing what they do. And AOC, she is of African descent as well. Seeing her take on that mantle as well for Afro Latinos, it's wonderful.
Mhm.
It's wonderful. I may not agree with them on everything politically, but it's amazing. And then Maxine Waters, she's
Oh,
the mama.
absolutely. Yes.
She's amazing.
That's
Yes,
auntie right there.
yes, she is. She's amazing, and she pulls no punches. And she's also set a standard too for Black women in office, that we can be unapologetically Black
Mhm.
and unapologetically truthful, and bringing truth to power, and being on those committees, the appropriations committee and whatnot, where the pocketbook is. That's amazing. Seeing people in those positions, making those choices and deciding what we're going to do in America.
Absolutely. So, again, because you mentioned it already, we have the passing of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I don't know about you, but my heart sank. I was like, oh.
It did.
And I said, there's a seat that's available. I knew there was going to be contention. I didn't really think that on the same day that she had died that they would call for a nomination. I didn't think that. However, we know that the leadership of Trump, we know the leadership of the Senate, specifically Mitch McConnell. We have a candidate. I I'm not excited about her. I am concerned, not just in terms of the outcome of the election if it should end up in the court's hands, but I'm also concerned about affordable care because she has put together a response that basically says that she feels that it needs to go away, that it's illegal, that it should not have happened. And I don't know about you, Shanay, but pregnancy is a pre existing condition. And before the Affordable Care Act was passed, I found myself married with a husband and both of us employed, but was laid off because of maternity and
Yes.
could not get insurance because I did not have a maternity rider on my insurance coverage. And was told by my insurance that, well, just go get help from the system. That turned into a whole nother nightmare, and was basically told my husband and I needed to divorce and for us to get assistance. This
Mm.
was in 2008. Yes, this was. And when we finally were able to look at some insurance where someone would even have a conversation, we were told that pregnancy was a pre-existing condition and that they would not cover anything until our son was at least a year old. I say all that to say that one, that is a real concern. And so millions of Americans, for not only pregnancy, heart disease, if you're born with heart murmurs or other kinds of issues, if you're diabetic, if you have
Mhm.
any kind of an issue, you will immediately be disqualified. Talk a little bit about, are you afraid? Are you hopeful in terms of the Supreme Court pick? Do you think that it will go through? Do you think it will not? What are your thoughts?
I think it will go through. I'm not hopeful at all.
Mhm.
And I want your watchers to know is that this is intentional. I mean, the process usually takes months, and
Mhm.
they're pushing it through so she can be seated on November 12th to hear about the Affordable Care Act. The ultimate goal is to end it. Like you, pregnant, being a woman, that's a pre-existing condition. I remember being discriminated against when I first had when I had my children, when I was pregnant with my children, and dealing with racism in medical care. So it's scary. And then now I have lupus, so that's a pre-existing condition. And before I was officially diagnosed, I would see my doctor under my husband's plan, and he refused to put lupus as my diagnosis because he knew that I would not be covered. So it
Wow.
was like we were playing games with the system, so I can get the care that I needed, but he wouldn't put that official diagnosis down until after the Affordable Care Act. So that's what I had to deal with, and so I didn't have to be discriminated against. And I thank my doctor for it at the time, my rheumatologist,
Mhm.
so I can get the care that I need. And I'm scared. I mean, I have 6 children. They're all under 26. One is in the military right now, so he's active duty. He's away, and I have all the rest of my children on my health care plan. And this is the way that they can have the care that they need. One is autistic, so that's a situation that I have to deal with. She's a young adult, but she has challenges, and she
Mhm.
has to have regular care, and the Affordable Care Act protects her. What I'm scared of is the 20 million people that would be thrown off of their coverage, that would lose their coverage. That's
Mhm.
a lot of people. And right now, 26 million Americans are unemployed. Then
Yeah.
you put on top of that the 20 or plus million people that will lose coverage. That's a lot of people in 300 million. That's more than 10% of the population.
Yeah.
So we're really dealing with an inevitable crisis. And then on top of it, we have COVID. So 7 million Americans have COVID. If this is taken away, that's an additional 7 million people with pre-existing conditions. What if my children had COVID? So, this is impacting me
Mhm.
greatly. So she would have a pre-existing condition and she would be able to be discriminated against. So, and all that's going to do is cost us more and put us in a hole. So I'm scared. I'm honestly scared for my children. I'm scared for our country and in the direction that it's going. I'm scared for my daughters because of birth control
Mhm.
and Roe v. Wade. I am pro-choice. I am proudly pro-choice. And if a young lady came to me and said she did not want to have a child, and she just couldn't afford to, and she needed me to help her or to walk her through the process, I'm afraid that that's going to be taken away from her. And women having control over their bodies. Sometimes women like that could be our worst enemy. They're just a tool in a patriarchal system, but they're in such proximity to power that they're willing to sacrifice the rest of us to maintain that power.
Mhm.
And that's where I see Judge Amy Coney Barrett, and she only has 3 years of experience
Yes.
as a judge. So
Mhm.
she has none at all. So that's scary. I mean, it's scary. And we know what this is about. Mitch McConnell's goal was to ultimately stack the courts. He stacked the courts with over 200 young judges
Mhm.
with barely no experience in the lower courts. And this is his crown jewel. This
Yeah.
is what he's wanted. He doesn't care about anything else but stacking the courts for the next century. So if this is his legacy before he loses power, this is what he's going to do.
Mhm.
So this is what it's about, and I'm scared. And I can say that I'm scared, but I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to empower my people. I'm ready to convince my legislators, my senators, and my congresswomen to take some steps.
Absolutely. And you bring up a great point, Roe v. Wade, affordable care. I talk about due process because there have been some rulings that have come down from some lower courts that have challenged the right of due process. And it's concerning. And eventually, you're correct. It will get to the Supreme Court, and there could be a decision that is made that is harmful against all of us. And
Hmm.
so it is. It's frightening to see all the different things that are going on.
I'm also scared about the further stripping of the VRA under
Yes,
Justice Roberts' court. He says racism doesn't exist anymore because we had a black president. This is obviously not
absolutely.
true because we have folks out here marching for George Floyd and Breonna Taylor.
Hmm.
So I'm worried about that. I'm worried that we're going to go backwards in time, and again to maintain a white supremacist power structure in the system. And I just hope that the Democrats, beyond this point, make decisions that would help even out the courts or to create legislation that would ensure that Americans are protected after the election cycle.
Absolutely. All right, so we have a few more minutes, but I have to talk about the fact that we have a vice president candidate, Senator Kamala Harris. And I just have to say, because you were on her campaign at the beginning and you were telling everybody, like, she is the one.
She's the one
And
to watch. Yeah.
she is the one to watch. And I remember, because I think we sort of disagreed about it a little bit. I'm like, Shanae, you sure? Because I kept telling everybody, I said it needs to be a white man. This country can't handle any more color. They can't handle a woman. And I just have to take my hat off to you because you were right. And so, talk to us about the importance of Senator Kamala Harris as a VP candidate.
Oh, shoot, I can't sing her praises loud enough. She is, to me, she has lit a fire under the party, under black women, under black people in general. I mean, she's from an HBCU. This is the first time we've had a candidate from an HBCU on the ticket. That is, in itself is the testimony to the greatness of the legacy our ancestors left us. That here she is on the verge of becoming the vice president, and her family's from Jamaica, but she would be the first a Black American or a Black person with enslaved African ancestry that made it to this office, and that's just remarkable. That's a testimony to her. It's a testimony to HBCUs and what they've done, and how they produce nothing but excellence. So that's one thing. I'm a big proponent of how she sees the world and how she questions authority. She is unafraid, unafraid. She is not afraid of anybody or anything. And she's taken it to Kavanaugh. She's taken it to Bill Barr. She's taken it to some heavy hitters, and they can't counter her. She's smart. She's feisty. And what I like about her is she's the first candidate that took on Black maternal child health. I used to work at the Detroit Health Department, and I saw that this is I learned that this is a big issue. And talking about ending racial disparities in healthcare for Black women, that's something that no one's talked about. And then she also talked about fibroids in Black women and investing in research. That's something we don't hear about, and I love it. I think that putting us first is something that it's never been done before. I like the other candidates, but for her to do that and to talk about it and to bring it up is amazing. And she also talks about lupus research for her sister Maya has lupus. So she talks about that as well and funding and talks about the HBCU funding. I know Trump talks about trying to get credit, I think $200 million, but what he doesn't say is that Senator Harris was the one that introduced that. So when you talk about, oh, I funded HBCUs, it was her who put that money in there for the HBCUs, for Howard University to do COVID research and for other HBCUs. So I love what she's about, from San Francisco, when she started out there, all the way to where she is now as the senator from California. She's always been about her work. She's one of those that gets things done. We can talk about it, we can get upset about it, but let's get to work. I like that kind of woman. Makes me, that's what I aspire to be, and that's what I see in her.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because you bring up Black maternal health. And we know that in the United States that Black women die at higher rates than white women do. And we only have to go to Serena Williams because I always talk about her story. And she says it. She had blood clots. She said, no one listened to me. I had to fight. And you think about it, but she's a celebrity.
Mm-hmm.
She's a billionaire. Why are you not listening to her? But this shows you the bias, the racism, the disconnect between medical care and the needs of women, specifically women of color in this country.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and she talks about that, and and I'm glad that there's someone that looks like us that understands where we're coming from saying this, and I've experienced it myself when I was pregnant with my son. My contractions were like a minute apart, so that's you ready to go in. And the doctor, when I first approached and then walked in, he wanted to send me home. I went home, but I'm still feeling these contractions. So I decided, my brother and my family decided they're gonna drive me back. So they drove me back to the hospital. And the same doctor was like, no, you can't come in. You're gonna go home. You just can't. You're not ready. My brother, who's 6'6", got up in his face. It's like, no, you're gonna let her in. And then as soon as they put me on the table, the bed, my water broke.
Mm-hmm.
So I was ready to go. So dealing with instances like that, and wondering, what if I did go back home and my water broke at home, and then the doctor wasn't going to treat me seriously, and then knowing that, I had a hard labor with my first daughter, and I had to have a cesarean.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew it was going to be hard again. So, dealing with that and not being taken seriously. And then, one instance, I can tell you another instance of racism. When I was pregnant with my daughter, the nurse asked me if I did any drugs. I said, no. She looked at my arm. She said, yeah, I know you did drugs. Come on, what kind of drugs do you do? I said, I'd never done a drug in my life. I'm from the Bronx, so I've seen heroin addicts, I've seen crackheads and all that stuff. So I knew that that's not where I wanted to be, because I've seen it, and I knew the experience of seeing that kind of life, So I knew I didn't want to do that. But the nurse was so insistent that I did drugs to try to shame me, that I just, all I could do was cry.
Wow.
So, but again, someone talking about these issues and addressing that, it makes me feel good for my daughters when they decide to have children, and for other women who are out there who want to have families someday.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Shanay, thank you for being on the Kim B. Davis Show. I knew who to go to get that political talk. We had to go no further than you. Tell people how they can reach you if they would like to get involved. And I know that people are going to want to reach out to you because they're going to say, well, what can I do to get involved? So before we go, tell us how we can reach you, and then tell us what we should do to get involved politically.
Well, you can reach me on Twitter. I am La Femme, LA, F as in Frank, E, M as in Mary, M as in Mary, E, _ Negrito, as in Negrito, Negrito, like black girl.
Yeah.
So I'm on Twitter, but I'm also, I'm a co-manager of the blog Bougie Black Girl with My Twin. So if you go on Facebook, you can follow her. and I'll respond or she responds as well. So you can follow me there. Now, if you want to become active, I would encourage people to go online and contact their local party. Now, if they don't want to be involved in party politics, there are nonpartisan organizations out there that encourage people to get out the vote. You don't have to be associated with a particular party. You don't have to, you don't have to be held to the party rituals. You can go to groups that are nonpartisan, that care about the issues, that are issue based, that are about your principles, and you don't have to agree with everything they do, but there are groups that you can reach out to in your area. Give you an example. My husband's organization is Michigan United. They're based in Michigan. They are a statewide organization. They have different issues that they advocate for, such as family care, immigration, criminal justice reform, environmental justice. You can reach out to them, and you can follow them at Michigan United on Twitter, or you can just type them up, and you can connect with them. And they're very active and very influential. And then they'll connect you with volunteering. So that's basically what I would encourage. And if you're a Black woman, one of my favorite groups is a Mothering Justice that's in Michigan as well. So they do target Black women, and it's Black women centered and organized. So they're a great group as well. And there are a couple more that I actually advocate for, and Mothers of Hope, which is in Kalamazoo. So I hear it, you getting me, and I'm getting these organizations, Detroit Change Initiative here in Detroit. So there are so many organizations out there that people can participate in if they feel like they want to make a difference in not just the city, but in the state.
Thank you so much, Shanay, for being on the Kim B. Davis Show and giving us your thoughts and helping us to get some clarity on some different issues, especially impacting women. Thank you for giving us your thoughts on Senator Harris. We are so excited that she is a VP candidate, and we hope that on November 3rd, that everyone will go out and vote, and that you will cast your vote for Biden Harris. Yes, I'm going to take a leap and say, hey, because you need to
Hey,
vote. You have to vote for
yes.
yourself. We
And
may
vote
not get
as
everything
early as you can.
as early as you can. We may not get
Yes.
everything we want, but we got to at least have something where
Yes.
we can have some decorum brought back to this country, and some common sense, and some practices, and get back to some of the basic principles, because there are some things that we can use to fight with, and we got to have a leg to stand on, because right now it's real shaky. That's all I
Yes, it
can say.
sure is.
But
That man ain't got a pot to piss in and a window to throw it out of too.
he
So he's
sure
desperate.
does. He sure does. We just need him gone.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
I want to thank everyone again. Thank you, Shanay, for being on the Kim B. Davis Show. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening. And remember to be magnificent.